Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here with us today. We have an amazing episode with Dina Merhbi where we talk all about overeating, nutrition, and creating new healthy habits. Dina is a health and wellness coach, NLP practitioner, and a yoga and mindfulness teacher. She has so much experience for over 23 years as a coach and a speaker and 21 years as a former clinical dietitian. She has helped thousands of entrepreneurs and high-performance women break free from unhealthy eating habits and mindset blocks so they can feel confident in their body, show up empowered in their business, and experience more joy in their life. She is absolutely amazing. I completely adored this episode. I love all of the information she shares with us. I loved learning about her process that she uses to help her clients. I'll make sure to leave her website in the show notes and her social media handles. She has a great Instagram page, so make sure you go and follow her there. And always send me a message. I love hearing from you and what your thoughts are on different episodes that we have. My handle on Instagram is Simply Jess Skincare. And you can also sign up for our weekly newsletters for the show, where I will link the latest episodes, and I always have offers there that I keep for just my email list. So if you go to www.simplyjessskincare.com, you can sign up for our newsletter. And when you do so, you automatically get 20% off anything in our line, in our natural skincare line as well. So enjoy this episode, and thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today we have Dina, and I am so excited to talk to you. Welcome to the program, first of all.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So I'm very excited to talk about this topic today. We're going to be talking about people and how we cope with overeating and struggling with overeating, which is so common, and so this conversation is so needed for so many. But before we get into that, I would love if you could just introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
So my name is Dina Merhbi. I am right now my title would be, I would say, naturopath and health and mindset coach. But I do have 21 years in my back belt as a registered dietitian. And right now I really brought more my nutrition background, my yoga and mindfulness teachings. Even I'm a neuro-linguistic programming certificate teacher. So I try to really bring like a holistic approach to my clients. And that's why I love talking about overeating, because we often think it's just about food. It is, but it isn't. And there's so many other aspects we need to talk about. So I bring all that multidisciplinary aspect working with my clients, and I'm so happy to be here sharing it today.
Yay. I love that you mentioned mindfulness, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But I feel like that is so critical when doing this type of work, and being mindful. And I know you do yoga too. So I know all of that is like so great for this topic and like with people who struggle. So before we get into like some of the root causes, I mean, I guess we could start. You mentioned that there are root causes for why we struggle with overeating. Maybe we could start there. Like, why do we have this issue? What are the main struggles that women are having with this?
So when you talk about overeating, it can be overeating, stress eating, emotional eating, binge eating. Anytime you're turning to food when you're not hungry, there's something that we need to kind of tackle and talk more about. And when we talk about the root causes, in the medical term, we say biopsychosocial. So it's biology, psychology, and social environment. But we've seen in the approach, what we see online is all about like dieting or do intermittent fasting and just focus on the food. Or we're going to a whole other way of saying, all food is permitted, like intuitive eating. All food is permitted. There's no good or bad food, and people feel at a loss there. But through the 23 years of helping clients, I've noticed that there is a reset that is needed to be done nutritionally. So that's part of the framework I work with my clients. We need to reset their body, because when you've been dieting for years and years, you have no idea what your body needs because we disconnected from it. Second part, we actually have to get you out of your comfort zone of self-sabotaging thoughts. So the thought that you have right now about good food, bad food, or Am I worthy of losing the weight? Or I am a binge eater, but I tell my clients, you're not an overeater. You struggle with overeating. So the way we talk to ourselves is also very important. So the mindset is getting out of your comfort zone and knowing that you can think differently. But the big one that I've seen the past few years is in terms of confidence and living an authentic life. Even if I do the nutrition aspect with my clients, I do the mindset aspect with my clients. I feel like there's an uneasiness inside of them, and they realize that they're not living life according to their terms. They're not Jess. They're a mom, a daughter, a podcaster, like a business coach, but they lose who they are in their life. And when you lose who you are in your life, you need that comfort. You need to soothe that void, that numbness. And what do you go for? Food, because it's the easiest thing to access for. So I've seen that more and more as I do longer containers with my clients right now.
Oh, that's so true. It's like we don't have a overeating problem. We have like an under feeling problem. Like we don't want to
There you go.
feel things and
Yes.
process things. And I love all that. So I think another thing that I want to mention is that you mentioned intuitive eating and, intermittent fasting. And I think it is true when you go from like, okay, I want to change this behavior that I have,
Hmm.
and you're online and you're doing research, it's like very confusing because then you're like, okay,
Hmm.
I'm going to this one person saying I need to be very, very strict and I need to cut this out. And then I'm going to try that. And then I see, oh, intuitive eating, and I'm not going to villainize any foods and I'm going to eat
Hmm.
whatever I
Hmm.
want. And then that could
There's
be,
no limits.
there's no limits. And I've actually I was just talking about this the other day about how it can be very confusing mentally for us because
Yeah.
we're like, well, what do we do? Like I actually do want to care what I eat. Like I don't want to just
Hmm.
be able to eat whatever, and because it might make me feel sick or sluggish or whatever. But it is confusing, and a lot of it, and what we don't see as much online is like, okay, let's look at our thoughts about, what we're doing and what we're thinking and how we could be self-sabotaging ourselves, which really has nothing to do with food, but
Hmm.
everything to do
Hmm.
with like the behavior and how the mind works and everything. So I love
Yeah.
all that. That's so amazing for just something new to think about. And also I think giving yourself permission to be like, you don't have to absorb every single thing that you see online. And what do you tell me about that with your
Yeah.
clients? Do they feel like that's an issue with them as well?
Well, whenever I start working with a client, we do a decluttering in the beginning. So we think decluttering, the home and so on, but decluttering their social media, decluttering their newsletters, but also decluttering conversations they have with people that might have the best intention to tell them what to do, but not to go for it. So they have to like unfollow, unsubscribe. Some for them, they would not even tell, they'll tell some people that they're following me, but then they won't tell all these other people because they're like, oh my God, we should have to follow this person. No, what is Dina telling you? You should be doing this. So you want to declutter everything around so that when you're working with this one coach that you're really connected with, that you really immerse yourself in that person's world. Because otherwise it can be very overwhelming. And the information I share might be very different or controversial to other things, but you've been always the dieting, the restricting, and it's not working. Maybe we have to step out of the conventional methods. Because one thing as well that I do with a lot of my clients and what I tell them is when you have an overeating problem, you're probably malnourished. You're malnourished physically. Are you lacking nutrients? Are you going to inflammation? Is there any medical issue? You're malnourished in terms of self-love. You're malnourished in terms of having fun activities in your life. So there's a malnourishment happening. And when you want to fill up your cup, you really need to make sure there's nothing around there where you're scrolling and you're like, oh, this is new. Oh, this is a hack. Or, oh, gummy bears that make me lose weight. Oh, and now there's like, the injections and the medication. Like, oh, this, maybe I'll ask my doctor about it. So you need to clean all that stuff up to be able to actually tune in because otherwise it will be a challenge when you're bombarded with so much information out there.
Oh, it's so so true. And there's so more now than ever. There's so much information that we have to discern from, and it's conflicting information too,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to food and like how to do things. What is the most important thing? You have to wake up and do X, Y, and Z, and then that's the
Yes.
critical. And if you don't do that, like it's difficult because there's just a lot of confusion. I think that's what a lot of people say and a lot of people experience. So what
Yes.
are your thoughts on since you mentioned like the medication, like are a lot of people coming to you and saying maybe I should just try that because that's a solution for overeating?
So when you look in terms of medication in any shape or form, there's a space for it. But I feel right now we are overprescribing it. I as well work at an obesity prevention clinic, and we've seen much less clients coming into the clinic because they're able to get that medication through the doctors. And again, when you have severe obesity, you're on a lot of medications. I understand how it is to be overweight and not be comfortable. But very often overeating, it's an emotional thing.
Mm,
And if you're not able to tackle these emotional voids because you don't have food anymore, it's going to show itself in another way. Alcohol, online shopping, gambling. So when you take away one coping mechanism, you might turn into another one. And as well, the thing that I tell everyone who wants to go on these medications, you know that they're for life. You can't take them and stop. If you take them, you reach the weight that you want and then you stop it, it's like you did a severe diet and then your hunger cues are going to kind of be so extreme. You're going to go back to overeating and even fall into binge eating because there's all these foods you couldn't eat because you were nauseous. So it does impact your social life during, but it's the after if you stop it. So you want to take it, it's a personal choice. But very often, if you don't have any medical issues, and if you've only been doing a lot of dieting and maybe the wrong approach for you, try to bring a holistic approach because when you know how to eat for your body, you know how to rewire your mindset and you shift your environment, you won't need a medication. You'll know exactly what to do. It does take work, but the only side effect is happiness. Not like all the side effects we have with the medication that a lot of people are finding themselves in the ER because of it. So overeating medication, maybe not, but severe medical issues, severe obesity, there's a place for it. And I totally agree with that.
that's a great answer. I love that. I feel like it's very true. There can be just like a transference for I might be overeating in this situation, then I have the medicine, and maybe like you said,
Hmm.
it's now I'm online shopping or,
Hmm.
doing other things in excess. So when you are talking, I want to get deeper into like the root causes of this because
Hmm. Hmm.
we're talking about overeating, but I do like you see, like as we've said, like this could transfer into other areas that people need help with.
Yeah. So when you look at their root causes, the first one, like when I look at me, because I started my first diet when I was 8 years old, and I struggled with anorexia, binge eating until I was able to find a balance with everything. So one of the main root causes is when you're actually putting your body in a starvation mode, a famine mode, which is a diet. So as soon as you put your body through a stress, it's like, I don't like this. And the main point of your body is to keep you in survival mode. It needs to survive. So every time that you restrict and you choose to restrict, not that we're living in a famine state, when you choose to restrict, your body is going to compensate for what's happening. It's going to actually increase your hunger signals, decrease your fullness signals, and increase your cravings for the sugars and the fats and the salt. So one of the root causes that starts overeating is dieting. 60 to 80% of dieting is the cause of binge eating. So when you think about these statistics, you're like, it's quite big. So I'm not on binge eating, which is a deeper, more intense way of overeating, but dieting is how it opens the door. But what is the other root cause? Were you teased when you were young? Were you emotionally abused, physically abused? Did you ever feel abandoned when you were young and you didn't have that right support? So you will end up going for food as a coping mechanism. And think about it. We still do it as adults. If you had a bad day, what do? Let's go out for drinks and dinner. I was like, oh, I'll come, I'll have a pint of ice cream together. We keep turning to food to soothe ourselves. And as kids, when there isn't any resource around or their parents are not there, they're not available, going through a divorce and so on, the kid is going to try to find comfort somewhere. So food becomes a self-medicating comfort without even realizing it. So that's one of the other root causes is when did food become more than just food?
Oh, yeah.
And the third
Go
cause
ahead.
I've seen, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, that's tough. That one's tough, but yeah, go ahead to number three.
Number three, and that's what I had mentioned, is how often when we grew up, we weren't accepted for who we are. We were judged as women. You're too loud, you're too opinionated, you're not feminine enough, you're not thin enough. So you always live like a comparison. And these are comments I had. You're too opinionated, who's gonna marry? Or your knees are not pretty, you should not be wearing a skirt.
Oh,
So you have these, like, now I laugh about it. And I even told the person who told me this comments, and she's like, I don't remember saying this. So people don't remember what they're telling you, but it stays in your system when you're growing up. So when you get all these comments, it makes you realize, like, for me to be loved, I need to not be who I am. And that causes that uneasiness inside of you. And when you're uneasy, you're not feeling good, you have all these emotions, like the coping mechanism. What are you going to do? You're going to turn to food because you are not loved for you. You have to put an image. You have to be a people pleaser. You have to put others first. And all that creates this uneasiness, this void of you not being you, that you turn to food to soothe yourself.
Mm. Yeah, that one is so powerful. Number 3 being, that judgment that we get, and not just like, I mean, it could be, of course, there's so many things that we are told that stick with us. Those things stay with us forever a lot of times. But
Mm-hmm,
especially when it's somebody talking about your body, it's not good enough, it's flawed, maybe you're too skinny or you're too big or whatever it is. There's so many opinions, and then we get all the noise from just being in this culture that we live in, where there's a
mm-hmm,
standard for what we should look
mm-hmm.
like and what our body should look like, and it's just hard not to absorb that.
And it's when you look at, like, for example, of course, like, I grew up the generation there was no social media, but imagine now the kids are seeing online, there's all these filters and they're starting Botox in their 20s now. There's this whole pressure of you need to change who you are to be liked. You need to change who you are to be pretty, to be desired, to be attractive. So we're always focusing on that physique that makes you want to adjust it with diet or other surgeries or so on, but it's all the personality. Are you fitting the norm of where you're living? Are you fitting the norm of what's accepted in your family, in your business, in your environment? As women, I feel when we're loud, we're said we're too loud. We're not seen as leaders. We're not seen as opinionated. A girl is seen as bossy, but a guy is seen as a leader. So of course, as well, how we label people's personalities, there's always a bit of negative for women that are more opinionated, but men, it's like, oh, this is a good quality. For a girl, it's like, oh, hush down, hush down. So it's like you need to hush down, you need to stuff yourself down, then you stuff yourself down with food. It all comes together. And it can start as young as the age of 4 or 5 years old. My first diet, I was 8. And I've
Was
had people at 6 start their
oh
first diet.
Was that
Heartbreaking.
that's terrible. I've heard young too. I haven't heard 6. That's heartbreaking. So when you were on a diet, was that like your idea? Or was that like, were some of your friends like, we should do this? Because I have a long history, and I've talked about it a little bit on the podcast with food. Starting as I did use it as a comfort when I was younger, and then I went the other extreme and had an eating disorder throughout my high school years. And
Mm,
it was a long journey of extremes after that. Like, I stopped my quote unquote eating disorder, but that thinking stayed with me for a very long time. And like you said, the dieting, which just leads to so many problems. You said 60 to 80% of dieting leads to binge eating. Well, it makes sense. Like, we're depriving ourselves of nutrients and things that our body needs. So it's like, I'm going to get it,
mm-hmm.
like, I'm going to make
And
sure
I'm
that
gonna get it now.
right. And like,
And I'm gonna stock up for the winter. Think about it. It's like stocking up. Like, it's like you don't need to stock up. There's food in the fridge. But we created this intense fear, and binge eating comes in. Yeah.
yeah. And then because your body's probably like, I don't know when this fool is going to eat again. Because of
I don't know what she's gonna eat again.
that's right.
Yeah.
So what happened for you when you were 8?
So I grew up, my family's in the fashion industry, and all my cousins were all like my sisters, all like slim, stick thin, and there's like, little chubby Dina. And you look at my pictures, I'm like, I'm larger than my sister, but I was not chubby. But I was always labeled chubby because I was born 12 pounds. So I think that as well has an issue.
Wow.
I was a big baby. Poor mom that had to give birth to me. But what happened, I still remember, like, it's like visual. I can watch it like a movie. Over a summer, over a year, these amazing little shorts I wanted to wear again from last summer, and they weren't fitting anymore. And I was too embarrassed or too shy or self-conscious to say, hey, can I buy new shorts? And I love them so much, I wanted to fit in them again. Like, we hear people like buy jeans smaller than you so you can fit in them again. It'll be motivation. So that was my motivation. So all I did in a certain way is nobody told me I needed to lose the weight. I just wanted to fit in those jeans at those shorts at 8 years old. So I stopped eating dessert. I was like, I'm going to lose weight. And here's the sad part. An 8-year-old not eating dessert should not be seen as, wow, you're so strong. I was not put on the pedestal, but I was congratulated because I did not eat the dessert. Like parents should be worried when kids don't want to eat desserts. We used to eat it every day in my family. It was always permitted. It was okay. And overnight I stopped eating dessert and that's how I lost the weight. And I was congratulated for my effort to not eat dessert. And that's how it started. But that was like I can say little diet, still problematic when you're 8. But my biggest issue is after when I developed anorexia in my high school years, wanting to lose 5 pounds that I gained over the summer, that turned into restrictive anorexia where I might have to be hospitalized, but I didn't, ballooning up to becoming a binge eater at 200 pounds. So this is when, after anorexia, this is when really the dieting took over because I tried to stay slim because I was congratulated in the beginning of my journey, like, wow, good for you for losing weight. And then they're like, you're losing too much weight. Okay, you're too skinny now. And then I started gaining weight. They're like, oh, you're gaining weight. You're gaining too much weight. Okay, you're getting too fat now. I always had these, it was never perfect. Nobody told me like, are you okay?
Oh, oh,
I think like if you see somebody struggling, you should look at them and say, are you okay?
yeah.
Don't say, did you gain weight? Did you lose it? You look at them, you're like, are you okay? So if a kid says no to dessert, for me, it's a red flag. Ask what's happening.
That is such good advice. I have a lot of moms who listen to this and a lot of moms with girls. And even though this happens for boys and girls, but not being like such, you got a lot of positive reinforcement because you didn't
There
eat
you go.
dessert. Like, so of course
Yeah,
you're like,
good for
oh,
you.
I'm doing something great. Where, yeah.
Oh.
And to say, oh, this is like a change. So asking, are you okay? And starting that conversation is so powerful. And it's such a good tip. So when you're, going back, I don't know if you go back and talk about these things with your clients. I feel like it would be super helpful to be like where and when and like what was your experience growing up and maybe to sort of see where some of these patterns started. Is that something and where and on top of that, like where do you start when you see a client? Like there's a lot to unpack when we are having these behaviors.
Mm-hmm. So my story, I share it when there's like a time and place in the consultations because I make sure the space is for the client. But if they're feeling alone, I'd like to kind of share my story. And I do share my story a lot on social media, on videos. I'm actually getting a book out that I'm going to be sharing more of my story in my system. So I believe in being transparent in what I went through because now how I'm like, I don't remember who that person was, but whoever she was, she helped me become who I am today. So the way to navigate with clients is number one, this is not an overnight solution.
Yeah.
We're taking things slow and steady to make sure that we're processing what we need to process in the journey. That we have to reconnect to ourselves. We're taking this time for ourselves. We're going to nourish ourselves. We're going to understand ourselves. And these voices, these do's and don'ts, this good food, bad food, all these things, we kind of look at them and discuss them as we progress. But it's a slow and steady pace because if you go too fast, again, it's going to be a diet and we're stressing the person out. When you're struggling with overeating, I think you're overwhelmed enough. No one's overeating saying, oh, today is a great day. I'm going to go overeat today. There's a pain behind that. So by giving the person space to live their emotion, to live what they're going through, to take the time to put a name to their emotion. And some of them are not able to actually like, how you feeling? They're like, I'm good. You're crying in front of me. How are you feeling? It takes time to reconnect to yourself. And we create so much space. That's why the containers are like 3 months, 6 months, because it's not a race.
Yeah.
And we talk about things as they show up. There's an event, we talk about that. There's nutrition we have to talk about. They have a medical issue we talk about, but it's all in terms of tuning in. How do you feel about this? Does this cause anxiety? Let's talk about it. Does it make you anxious? Let's talk about it. Because very often in the dieting world, even when I used to be a registered dietitian, it's like, here's the plan and there you go. If it was that easy, there would be no obesity, there'd be no overeating. We can just be robots. We lost a human approach in our coaching. We lost the moment of giving people space. And a lot of my clients, their only me time is when we talk together. because I genuinely care for them. Like the 1 hour we have together, it's their 1 hour. And if you're able to just give yourself that gift, whichever way we maneuver in our session, or if there's another coach you're working with, that 1 hour, 2 hours, it has to feel like it's your time. It's not a race. There's no to-do list. It's just being there and reconnecting. That's the gift of the coaching to
Mm.
help you with overeating. Not a plan, not calorie counting. You need to, what I tell my clients, and I'd say that's the first session, is we don't have a problem connecting. We just disconnected ourselves from our head and our body. We try to think what we should do, but what is your body telling you? Our aim is to realign your body and mind. And that realignment is when intuitive eating can actually come into play in a certain way. But this is the reconnection, but creating that space, like let's just talk and let's just reconnect. And this, I think, the beauty of the coaching that I do with my clients.
Oh, I love that. I love the slow approach because I think one of the points of a diet is fast, right? Like it's like you can
Mm-hmm.
lose this weight fast, like 21 days and all of these things that you hear. And they're probably because a lot of people are on that yo-yo dieting schedule, they're like really ready to go. And it's like,
Yeah.
hold on, let's do this slow and like keep it forever. And like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no like I guess there's no like end date. This is like a lifestyle change. It's not like a race to be healthy, just like it's a race to lose weight. And I'm sure a lot of these people have a lot of experience with diets and like trying to get everything
Mm-hmm.
done super fast. And I'm sure they've had a million plans. If that worked,
Yes.
then they'd be
Yes.
fine.
So, because we always see it as a race, first point A to point B, but I tell clients we're climbing up a mountain. Like, I've been doing this for 23 years and I still read things. I'm still learning things. I'm still doing training so that I can still improve myself. It's a work in progress for the rest of my life because there's always little challenges coming in and we try to grow and evolve and learn. So if you, instead of seeing it as a flat terrain A to B, see it as you're going on an adventure. You're going up a mountain. You reach a milestone, you take time, you have your little snack, you watch the view, and you're like, oh, what else is there up there? And you keep going and you keep growing. And when you see this as a growing experience, you don't want it to end because you always want to learn something more and make yourself better for you. Because when you fill your cup, you fill the cup of everybody else around you. And I have a lot of clients that come to me, they're like, okay, Dina, what plan are you giving me? From the first session, I was like, I don't know. What plan do you want? It's like, oh, I want to know what calories. I want to know this. And I was like, you've done that before. She's like, yeah. Did it work? Yeah. So why are you here? It's like, well, did it really work for a long time? I'm like, so it didn't work. So I was like, so I give them guidance. I give them ideas. I give them new concepts, but there isn't a plan. And this is the scary part is there's a bit of guidance, but you can't do this on your own because when you do it on your own, you're going to go back to the dieting industry because it's easy. The success stories are amazing if they're real or not. It's always something we have to be careful for. But that's what I see. It's a mountain. You're going through a growth process for the rest of your life. And this is the beauty of life, right? To keep growing, evolving, becoming a better person.
Yeah, oh, yeah, it's so true. It's like we're not done but I love that switch like that it's like a thought shift of a perspective on what the results should be and like expectations and really what the bottom line is like getting healthy mentally too because that's how
Hmm.
the patterns stop. And I'd love to ask you about habits because I know for a lot of people this is a habit binge
Hmm.
eating or turning to food. How do you go from these more negative habits that aren't serving you to a more positive habit? And do you talk to that with your clients?
Hmm. Definitely. So the one thing I want to kind of clarify is that if sometimes you feel like having a chocolate when you're down, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's more when it becomes the only thing and it becomes to a moment that you feel physically and mentally unwell with it. So having chocolate, dessert once in a while, it's okay. It's human. That's the best way to explain it. We're not trying to like erase that. But the best way I explain to my clients is like you're on one part and you created the super highway to get to the island. So where you are right now is the emotion that you're not feeling good. And you have the super highway, which is the habit of eating to get you to the numb part, to forget what you're feeling. So the more you turn to food, you create this amazing super highway in your brain that in a nanosecond, you're not even consciously deciding to eat. You just end up walking to the fridge and you don't even realize it. You end up like picking up and calling Uber and you're like, it's as if somebody else took over, but it's just your subconscious programming that has been doing this so much. It's like, I got you. I got you, Dina. I know this feeling. We don't want to deal with it. Let's go for food. So you train your body to go for food when there's a certain chemical exchange, a certain emotion. So when you focus that there's that super highway, we can't just break it down. Because by breaking it down, you're not ready to feel those emotions. You're not ready to deal with that situation. So how can we start creating another highway of different habits to create that bridge from where you're feeling right now to feeling better later? So one tip I give a lot of my clients is, what are other activities that make you feel good, that are not food related and that are not related to weight loss? It's not like I'm going to go to the gym. Do you like the gym? Are you doing it for something else? So is it walking? Is it drawing? Is it calling a friend? Is it putting your favorite music? Is it reading inspirational books? Is it watching a TV show? So it's understanding is there's all these other habits you want them to become healthier. So every time you have this little emotion, you tell yourself, let me go for a walk first and let me see how it is with the food. So you might go for a walk, come back home and still eat the food. And that is okay. But every time you keep having a walk, doing an activity and stretching the gap between your feeling right now and the food it will nullify itself. So don't expect doing it once, it will anchor. It took years for food to become a habit, but it doesn't have to take years to build a new habit. It's consistency, knowing that list, and doing it every single time. And one thing I'm going to give you a bit of a heads up. Sometimes we know what situations make us turn to food. People, events, social gatherings, work. So if you know every time you see this person, you end up overeating, already pre-plan. When I see that person, I'm going to go see somebody who lifts me up, or I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to take a nap, or I'm going to take a shower. Pre-plan as well, because you'll see there's a pattern of why you're overeating. It's not out of the blue. There is a reason behind it. I need that little nanosecond. But when you're in it, that's why I recommend to go with a coach, because a coach can give you that outside perspective and say, hey, your coach can connect the dots to what's happening that maybe you're not ready to connect them either. So think of that super highway. We can't break it down. We need to build a new one. And that's by consistently doing activities that you love to stretch the time between your emotion and your food so that at one point you're like, oh, I don't need to eat anymore. And that changes. That changes the whole game for a lot of people.
That's great. I love that, where you can, say, okay, I'm having the urge or a trigger, and instead I'm not going to do it right now at this moment. I'm going to go do a walk or whatever it is. You can still have the food, but I think that trick is like you're giving yourself a space, and your mind is starting to realize like not everything has to be like instant, where there's no awareness, because I think that's what will help retrain it. I really love that. And I love what you said, have a, like pre-plan. If you know that there's something that is going to be a trigger or come up that might be something that that will make you want to reach for food or whatever. And I went on a yoga retreat last year, and we did it was like a self-care menu, and we had to brainstorm things that we enjoy, not that other people enjoy, not like you said, some people don't want to go to the gym. That's not self-care for them. That's just like a chore. So
it's like self-punishment.
Right. So like, what do you like? Like, is it a bath? Like what could it be for you? Like customize it, not what people are doing online, but like, what do you like? Sit down and then like, I have like a little index card from that retreat, and I have like all the little ideas that if I am having a bad day or if I need some type of self-care, I can just like remember what I thought of that works for me really well. So I really love that.
That's beautiful
Isn't that nice? I love that.
Very nice.
I loved my yoga retreat. I did a whole episode on it because it's those little things that we learned, and like that time of self-reflection and like group reflection. It was so beautiful. But is there anything else that you want to share with us before we go? Is anything else about any of this topic that you want my listeners to hear?
We talked a lot about, the emotions, the mindset, the coping mechanism. But the crucial thing is if you don't nourish your body and it feels safe, all the other work will be hard to do. when you're actually physically hungry and malnourished, no amount of positive thinking or mindset work will work because your basic needs are not met. So I really focus on nutrition first with my clients. I really want to make sure you're full nutritionally with macro and micronutrients. I really want to make sure your body is good to be able to do the mind work, because whenever I do the eating part, a lot of my clients, 50 to 75% of their overeating disappears. Because in the end, they were actually just not eating according to their blood sugar level, their hormones, their age, their fitness. It was a little bit all over the place. So focus on stability, focus on calming your body, focus on making your body feel safe. Feed yourself like you would feed a 5-year-old kid. Eat, nourish, calm, and trust me, you're gonna see like, I was not emotional. I was just like maybe really hungry, and just that little moment just triggered me stronger. So focus on getting your body well nourished, and then the mindset work, the confidence work just kind of goes on its own. It's much easier to access. So I think that would be the one key takeaway of everything is amazing, but if you're starving, nothing can work. No positive thinking or mindset work will work the way you want it to work for the overeating.
What do you feel like as far as, I would love to ask about blood sugar and how does this affect binging?
So when you look at the physical reasons of binge eating that I've seen with a lot of my clients is you're hungry or you get to a level where you're famished. So think of your body like a boat. If you have irregular eating patterns, sometimes you eat, sometimes you don't eat, sometimes you only have carbs, sometimes you only have protein, you're kind of like this boat that's going through a storm. Nothing is predictable. You're going up and down, and a boat going up and down, you're nauseous. You're not doing good. You're anxious. So you end up going to be eating something to kind of calm that down. But imagine that you're eating regularly. You balance your foods. Your blood sugar, instead of having too high or too low, it's always nice and stable. You have that calmness inside of you. So if ever there's any overeating, it's not because you're hungry. It's not because you're famished. And this is why the calmness comes in. Very often, overeating, binge eating, emotional eating, there's a physical malnourishment that's happening. Your blood sugar is all over the place, like dieting, for example. Intermittent fasting. You're not eating in the morning. Then you have the 6-hour window of eating and you're so famished. You're going to eat everything you can because, intermittent fasting, and then you have to stop. But maybe you need more energy in the morning. Maybe you're working out. So creating that stability in you. And why I talk about a reset is how can you eat the way that you were born meant to eat? Babies eat every 2 to 3 hours. And what happens when they don't eat? Is the end of the world. Even if you feed them for 24 hours, you're not doing good. So you have the same system. So before you get into another health plan, get back to basics, reset your system, keep things calm. Because when your blood sugar is nice and stable, you're able to see things clearly. You're not seeing things from a famished point of view or high blood sugar that gives you that high and then you crash again. So think of that boat. Like you want it to be like on a nice lake and calm and steady. But when you're not eating regularly and your blood sugar is all over the place, you're actually in a boat in the middle of the ocean in a big storm, and it's hard to do things clearly at that point.
Oh, that's great. It's a real physiological component to all of this. It's like, it's not, and it's because a lot of us are just trained to follow what other people are doing instead of really, we talk about this so much with so many of my guests. Listen to what your body needs, what you need.
Yes.
And we're all different. So this is amazing. I so appreciate you sharing all of this information with us. It's so important.
Oh, my pleasure.
And yes. And people, we need to hear this. And it's some of it is just like new for a lot of people, but a lot of this is like a reminder of what we need and like how to have that balance in our life. I had an acupuncturist on last week, and she was saying, one of my biggest takeaways from her was balance. We doing these extreme things, or one day it's like we need 200 grams of protein a day, and one day it's we're like it's really goes back
the
to
carb cycling. I'm like, why it's exhausting.
I could never manage that kind of thing in my life, but yes, like it goes back to like, let's have balance, and that is the best way to sort of have that health that we're all looking for. So thank you so much. And
my pleasure. So much.
So appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.